Well, let's get into it, guys. Today I got Heid with me, and he is the owner of Midwest Drags, Drag and Drive Addiction. He's a huge member of the community, and there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, there is. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. It's Florida. I don't need another excuse to come to Florida, but thanks for the invite.
It's not exactly the race season, but you're here anyways. So
yeah.
there's a lot going on, man. I'm glad you came in, and I'm glad that you trusted me with the responsibility in a way to, talk about this, because it was a big pain point, I would say, last year, 2022, 2023-ish.
It's been a little bit better than a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where, the issue happened where there wasn't an issue, but you trademarked the words drag and drive, and then that's when kind of the floodgates opened and everything led us to here, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that's when we trademarked the phrase drag and drive. That was when the mass majority of the public became aware of it.
Yeah.
And that was part of the issue is that, we started way back in 2018, and there was a ton of people that actually knew the trademark existed, but it wasn't the mass public. They didn't know about it. And that was the problem.
So for people that don't know, let's give them a quick rundown on everything. You've been doing Midwest Drags since 2018. And drag and drive was a term you coined to help you advertise your event, to distinguish it from other events,
right?
Other racing events.
Yeah, if you look at the timeline, the Holy Grail started in 2005, right? When Freiberger, and at the time it was called 10, the Enthusiast Network, but when they put that together, and then Frost came on out with his in 15, and then I came on out with mine in 18. The concept and put it on paper, the logo, everything like that was in 18, but the first official was the first week of June of 2019.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, when it first kind of was I've talked about this with a few people, like 2005 on, it was crickets. There was just drag week, right? That's what they call it?
That's all it was drag week.
Drag week, and then Matt Frost came out with his,
right,
and started his kind of on the other side of the country to, have the balance. And then there was still a need for more.
Right.
Because that's how the free market works. When there's a need for more,
right,
then you implemented yours, and then the boom really, really happened in the last 2 years, I would say.
After COVID is when it really started to accelerate.
Like now there's, I think, like 50.
Globally, yeah. I mean, we've got, our Swedish friends in the UK, Australia. You've got Miles and Mayhem up in Canada.
Yep.
So globally, I would say there probably is 50 drag and drives. Here in the United States, I would say between the week-long national events and the 3-day regional events, I'd say we're probably in the 30s somewhere.
Yeah, and you came out with this phrase, and your thought was protection, right? What was your kind of your back thought on, like, let me trademark this? Because trademarks aren't super common in the automotive world, I would say.
Well, the idea of why I had to come on up with something unique was because at the time, everybody was saying drag week. And if you knew, you knew what drag week was. But there was a lot of people who didn't even know what drag week was. But the people would say, hey, I want to build a drag week car. I want to build a drag week trailer. I want to do this. I want to do that. And as a promoter and in marketing, it's very confusing when you have an event named this and other people are using the name of another event. So, for example, what we heard all the time was, I want to build a drag week car and go do Midwest Drags. I want to build, a drag week trailer and go do Midwest Drags. So I had to come on up with something that was a unique phrase that was a little bit different so that I wouldn't be stepping on the toes of drag week, because that's their name. And I wanted people to, what is it that we're doing here? I mean, it's not drag racing. It's we're not going on out for a cruise. I mean, we're drag racing and then we're driving. So what do we call what we're doing?
Yeah.
How about drag and drive?
Yeah, and then you end up in this interesting world of that phrase becomes the cornerstone of what everyone now calls it.
Beyond our wildest dreams. Never in my mind did I ever think that it would soar to what it is. Never did I think that around the whole world. I mean, you know, we've got other people that are trademarking it in different countries. My trademark only exists here in the United States in the 50 states, right?
Yeah.
But so other people are trademarking it in other countries. Never thought that it would take off as large as it did. But I remember the day that it did take off because it was kind of crickets prior to that too. But it was during the live feed when Freiberger and Loans were using it. And it was after that, it seemed like it was everywhere. It was in publications. It was on the front cover of PR magazine. It seemed like it was everywhere once those two started saying it. It was kind of like it was an endorsement of, hey, guys, this actually is what we're doing. So
yeah, once you hear Brian Loan's voice say something, it kind of sticks a little bit.
Pretty much there.
It's kind of racing gospel at that point. But when was that? What, 2019, 2020?
No, it was after COVID, and I believe it was after we gave the car away. It had to have been after we gave the car away.
Yeah, so that's when it really sparked.
Yeah, because see, you know, we built that giveaway car, the '67 Chevy 2. We built that car, and then to give away for our second year, which our second year would have been 2020. We were all shut down, so we gave the car away in 2021. So it probably was the September of 2021 broadcast.
So you skipped a year during COVID?
Yeah, we shut down. We didn't do anything. I mean, and I can tell you something. Giving away a car it's very expensive to give away a car, and it's really expensive when you go dormant for a year and you got to figure out where you can take the car and what you can do because the sponsor still want eyeballs all on the car.
Yeah.
So we had to figure out where can you go when you can't go anywhere to be able to show off this car.
Yeah, because a lot of people at that time were being rebellious.
Yes.
And having events, but you could only be rebellious on a drag and drive if everything works in its favor in a way because the tracks have to be on board, they have to open, there has to be hotels open that are even going to accommodate restaurants. Like it's more than just showing up at a drag strip at these deals, and it's a tough one. And I know, you know, that's why Race Week 2.0 appeared was in response to the shutdown of Drag Week. And, you know, I guess that's kind of how anything really appears is the necessity of it. Right. And then, so you came back, you were giving away a car, and that was, what was the concept on giving away the car? Why did you decide to do that? Was that to drum up business? Was that to drum up attention? Was that...
Well, it was 100% a marketing expense. I mean, absolutely. But we didn't want to give the car away to just anybody who could afford to pay the registration fee. And that was the reason why, you know, we're trying to build this community and we wanted to give back to the community. I got a lot of drag and drive sponsors that gave parts to the build. We wanted to give it to a drag and drive racer. So we set some rules on in there that one, you had to can finish the event, and two, you had to be faster than 10.5, which kind of kept on out anybody from bringing out just their wife's Tahoe, easily competing the event, and then being able to win.
So the only way you could win it was to be part of the event.
Part of the event. You could not buy an additional ticket. There was nothing that you can do, and if you didn't complete the event, I mean, what we were trying to go for, we were trying to have really a hitter's race. I mean, we were trying to get 300 cars that were all faster than 10.5. And I really believe we could have done that, but COVID hurt everything. I mean, we had so many big cars that were signed up to come on out for that event, for that one race. But between the part shortages, just everything that was just against us, we didn't get the 300 cars. But it could have been cool. I mean, we were doing something. I mean, we were swinging for the fence.
Yeah, because there was a need for that, you know, small tire, radial tire, fast car event as well. And that can only really happen in a few places in the country because you're not going to do it up in the Rocky Mountains. You're not going to be the fastest car. You know, it's not going to be as fast as in Florida or in Midwest where the tracks are good. And that was always something that, you know, I heard about you was your event catered to the fast cars. You prepped really well. You know, you would go up and tell some of the faster radial cars, like, hey, we're about to spray, hold off for a minute. The drives were the best because, or a lot of racers preferred the drives. I'm not going to say they're the best, but a lot of racers preferred the drives because you just told them where the end goal was, and you weren't like, hey, this is what you have to do.
Yeah, a lot of the rules that the Midwest Drags has and Nostalgia Nights. Nostalgia Nights is a regional 3-day 8th mile event that I have as well. A lot of the rules are you can thank a drag and drive racer for. So the no turn by turn directions, that's Clark Rosenstengel. He came to me and he was the first one that said, hey, listen, these turn by turns are tough. He said these cars are loud. He said a lot of times, and this is before everybody starts wearing headsets, right? He says, we're having to adopt hand signals. We're having to turn around all the time. We're turn 3 miles before where Bob's old tree used to be, right? So, and then the other thing, when I got to thinking about it, it's like, 3 o'clock in the morning when somebody's really trying to make time, are they really truly going to be doing turn by turn, or are they going to get on the highway and zip it? They're going to, so don't have a rule that you can't enforce. And that was then one of the reasons why, if you want to use your GPS, I'm going to give you an address and then just get there. As long as the vehicle moves underneath its own power, you're totally legal.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, for you to go point A, point B, there's really on the high side, like 3 different possible routes, usually 2, right? Unless you want to go way out of your way to try to be able to get there. There's only a couple routes for you to take.
Yeah, well, like I've been in a few drag and drive situations where, we like, oh man, the last of my second sick week, I think it was, there was a pipe burst in front of us and we were in stop and go traffic for 2 hours because of a pipe burst. And like, if you were just using your basic GPS, it would have saved you. But like, that's not the promoter's fault. That's no one's fault.
Right.
There was 20 fire trucks and a bursted pipe, and it's like a gas leak. It was a propane leak, and we're coming through with like
right.
I was like, oh, this is really safe feeling. This is fun. And things like that get avoided, or bad times of day, and like especially in Florida, I mean, you go through the wrong time of day in the wrong area. So I do like that. It definitely, I could see where some might not like it because people just disperse and you're not stopping at the same place as everyone, but it's one of the things I heard about when I was talking to people about your event. So just wanted to kind of touch on that.
And all of our route stops are always motorsports related. We've been to John Force Racing. We've been to Walt Herr shop. Walt Herr was our Larry Dixon's clutch guy back in the 90s. We've been to Kelly's crankshaft, profiler cylinder heads. We always try to go to motorsports related route stops. And like this year, all 3 of my route stops are actually builders, which is really good because these are the guys that are, busting their butts to come on out and do these events, and to be able to take other racers and go and show them their shop. It's kind of a nice little, hey, thanks for coming on out and supporting us. We're going to bring some people to you as well.
Yeah, and it's important to have a stop where the shop may be willing to help. Even if they charge, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't expect it for free, but a shop that's willing to help, that's one thing. KSR always does that. Down here in Florida, he opens his shop doors up and his employees are there, and he's like, we'll weld up whatever, we'll do whatever.
And the cool thing about having somebody like Kevin or Walt or another drag and drive racer is they're going to put on the route stop that they themselves would want. After Walt's stop, he called me on up and he said, he actually thanked me, but I need to be thanking him. But he said he served 600 cheeseburgers at that route stop.
Wow.
And his courses, Corey Bowl, he broke his differential, so he won a $250 Mosier gift certificate and used Walt's lift, and they put his 10-bolt back together, and he continued the event.
Yeah, I mean, it's things like that really can separate an event. I mean, there was people on the dyno at Kevin's shop.
Oh, yeah.
It's to that extent where, like, people are really fixing their shit. And that's how these drag and drives are. And I think that's what people love about them. I think if nothing ever goes wrong, it's a boring drag and drive and you get no stories. You want just the right amount of things to go wrong.
Right.
Just the right amount of fixability.
Yeah. I mean, you want to have a little bit of challenges, but at the same time, you sure do want to have a good time with your buddies in your car.
There's a level. Like a valve spring is like, okay. You break a main, you're like, That's kind of the level of it.
It's going to test your dedication to seeing Friday is what it's going to do. Yep.
And even... I like when they're spread out, like you drive a lot, but they're also close. You get what I mean? Like you have to drive far, but but you're never actually that far, which
Yeah.
is a real nice benefit.
I try to make my drives about 200 miles. Usually, I haven't had a Midwest Drags where the mileage exceeded 850 miles because, most of these guys are going on about 100 miles and they're stopping for a variety of reasons. But honestly, 100 miles in one of these cars, man, you're ready to get out.
Yeah.
So
And you're at the will of the track. Like, how close is the track? What is, like, what's possible?
Yeah.
And that's the main crutch of a lot of these is you can't just put them anywhere. Can't just put it anywhere in the country.
And when you're, from the promoter side, when you're trying to put one of these things together, you have to get all the tracks willing to play ball.
Yeah.
Because if one of them won't, then that messes on up your loop and you have to go someplace else. So it's really important that, when you figure out who wants to be who you would like to have the host facility, and then you start figuring out the other ones, and then you start backfilling it then with the route stops. But getting all those track promoters to be able to play game is sometimes difficult. And it's hard on them, too, because they're not always open on a Wednesday or open on a Thursday or something like that. So now then they've got to go convince their staff, hey, would you call in sick that day because we need you at the track. So there's a lot of people behind the scenes that actually make these events possible.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've seen that firsthand, and I'm pretty in awe every time I go to one because the amount of moving parts seems way more than most are willing to deal with. And I think a lot of events figure that out after their first one, and they're like, this may have been a little more than I may have bit off too much here.
It's more than a simple track rental and ordering T-shirts.
Yes.
It's way more than that.
Exactly, because the fan experience, the participation experience is so good, and then the fan experience is tough because it's Monday through Friday. It's hard to really fill seats and really fill stands in that when you're working in that situation.
It's tough.
So I definitely don't envy any promoter at any point. I've always tried to show as much respect to them as possible. We all kind of speak our mind a little bit on these promoters, I think, but they tend to get a lot of heat, I would say.
And the track owners too. I mean, the track owners, the friends that I have that are track owners, we all agree. It would be very easy to spend $20,000, $30,000 to market an event if you knew that it was absolutely going to happen, such as a wintertime indoor event. I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But we don't always necessarily know something is going to happen at this location because the one thing that you should throw all of your marketing money at is the one thing that you can't, the weather. So it's just kind of like, what do I do as far as this market's concerned, that market's concerned, and this market's concerned?
Yeah.
Really the best that you can do is market the event as a whole and try to see what that's going to help you on out with.
Yeah, man, I don't envy that. So let's talk more about this trademark here. So I feel like it all happened in one day, but it definitely wasn't one day, but it all came to light in one day, right? Would that be accurate?
For me, no, it was a lifetime.
Yes.
It lasted a lifetime. Every minute was a lifetime. But yeah, the misunderstanding started on Memorial Day of last year, 2023. And then from there, it spiraled.
What would be the spark on that? What unfolded first? Was it the T-shirt debacle? Was it what was the first kind of where everybody started to pile on?
And see, this is the thing. This is what took so long to understand is, what exactly is the issue? Because a lot of times, what people are complaining about, the issue isn't the issue. It's actually something else. It took us a while to figure out that people thought that this was a takeover, and that we at the last, the 11th hour after, hey, drag and drive is starting to become a popular phrase. Then we just came on in there and we stole it and we took it, and then it only takes a couple of minutes. We'll just go ahead and trademark it. None of that is anywhere close to being true. I mean, there was a lot of people who knew about the trademark back in 18, back in 19. And for anybody who's actually gone through the legal process of getting a trademark, if it's fast, it's 6 to 9 months. Me, it's a little bit longer because I had some, the first time that we actually applied for the trademark, we were actually denied. And the reason, the examining attorney, she came back to us and she said, well, you can't trademark the phrase drag racing. It's too commonly used. You can't do that. And she said, drag and drive is so similar to drag racing, you can't trademark it.
Would that be the examining attorney on the government side of things?
The Trademark and Patents Office at the federal level.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
So she came back to you after doing her own due diligence after you submit the application, and she says no. Okay.
Right. And when you submit stuff to them, you got to submit a lot. You got to submit, what was the first use? What was the first public use? You got to prove that you were the originator of the phrase. How did you create it? All of that stuff was submitted to her. And she didn't have a single problem with any of that. What she had a problem with was drag and drive sounded to her like drag racing. And so what we had to do is go back to her and explain to her, you're correct. Drag refers to drag racing. The N refers to and, but where it's not correct is the fact that the drive is not referring to driving your car when you're drag racing. It refers to being DOT compliant, having a driver's license, having proof of insurance, being able to drive your car on public roads. You don't do that in drag racing. Mm-hmm. And that's what made us different. And
it's funny that I'm just imagining explaining all this to somebody that doesn't know cars at all, because I assume a lawyer at the federal level office doesn't understand any of this, and it's just kind of like, okay, I guess I got to dive into this.
And from my perception, I'm looking at this like, it's
obvious.
Who doesn't watch the broadcast of Drag Week every year? I mean, that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But so I had to explain that back to her, how we are different than just drag racing. There is that public roads component to it. And when she understood that, then we were granted. And she said, that's original. You can then go ahead and have the phrase drag and drive.
Interesting. So you started this process in 18, mm-hmm. pretty much right after you kind of went down the route of making your own event. You did the two things at once.
Yeah, because when, in the promoter's world, what's worth promoting is worth protecting. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to spend the time promoting a name, then you need to protect the name because, you just can't go, you want to promote something and then let somebody build it. Once it starts to take off, then let somebody come on in there and just take it from you.
Yeah.
And the community of drag and drive, it's not me. It's every single racer who pays their registration fee and then comes on out every single year. And we estimate that to be probably about 15,000 racers around the world.
Yeah, globally.
That are competing annually. It's probably 15,000. Yeah. So there's 15,000 racers that are actually making on up the drag and drive community.
And they consider themselves part of the drag and drive community. And I think that's become synonymous with mm-hmm. what we do,
Right.
It's just kind of second nature to say that,
right.
which is a cool thing in itself that's become what it is. I would imagine you take some pride in that. I assume you're the first person to kind of come up with this. I'm just basing off of what you tell me. You know what I mean?
That I'm the first person to come up with the phrase?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's based off of, we're drag racing mm-hmm. and then we're driving. That's the whole drag and drive.
Absolutely. So, it's very cool that it's become what it is.
Yeah.
There's a world around it. But the issue really started to come when people kind of didn't know how you were going to protect the name. Because once you get accepted, and I guess the end and the N are also an interesting part. So drag and drive are both protected.
Okay, so if you use the AND mm-hmm. and if you use the ampersand and if you use the N, and then even if you were to change a little bit of some of the other things, there's a thing out there that's called implied use.
Yeah.
So if you're still referring to the actual activity of drag and drive, then changing the spelling of it doesn't change how you're implying to use it.
Interesting.
So what we're doing on our logo is the actual N. But if you use and or you use ampersand and you're still talking about the physical act of driving your car from track to track, well, that's drag and drive, and then that's the implied use.
So how did you, when it does come to light, how did it first come to light? Did somebody find a piece of paper from the trademark office? Because all that stuff is made public, right? Like once things are trademarked, it's made public so anybody can find it if they plan to use, if somebody out there doesn't know about it and they're like, oh, I'm going to use this, they can search that and find it.
Yeah, every patent and trademark and copyright, they all have numbers, like a VIN number, right? So we have that for ours, and anybody can go and search it. But I don't expect people to, when they heard the phrase drag and drive, to go on out there and say, is this trademark before I can actually use it? So when people were using it, other promoters, retailers, racers, things like that, we would call them and just say, hey, welcome to the community. We just want to let you know that that is a trademark that we certainly have. You can use it. We can offer you a license. They were, prior to the attack, they were $1 then. They were $1 during the attack, and they're still $1 now for an annual license. And then if you're within the drag and drive community, it's very easy to get the license, and then you can use the phrase drag and drive.
Is there anybody, like verification, I guess, of anybody using it for $1 before the attack?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to divulge my client list. Of course. But there was promoters, there was motorsports retailers, and then there was a handful of racers that were all using it.
Yeah. I guess I was just more clarification for was it actually in use as it sat before anybody even, it all came to light.
Yeah. And it was such a dumpster fire. I don't blame anybody for not wanting to speak up or, try to right the ship. But there were so many things that were being said that could not been farther from the truth. And some of these things were just flat on out blatant lies. I mean, such as, I'm suing Bailey. It's never coming close. Bailey and I were very cordial. There was no reason, that we served Matt Frost a cease and desist letter. We never did that. We never did anything. In fact, we've spoken to Frost. Narcs did. He had some questions about it one time. We've spoken to him about that. Bailey knew about the trademark before his magazine even came out. Before we even gave the car away, he knew about it. And when he called me on up and said that he found Luke and that he was going to create the magazine, I said, perfect. I'm getting the trademark on Drag and Drive. We'll move forward on this. And then he mentioned that he had that magazine. And I then invited him to come on up, and at the Molly Motorsports Awards ceremony, right before Rick Steinke came on up on stage and actually pulled the number that Jay Grabiak won the car, Bailey spoke for a few minutes and talked about the official launch of Sick the Magazine and how that was going to be the magazine for our movement. And that was, I think that was his first public statement of the magazine. So I felt that was pretty cool that it happened at my event, that he says, this is what we're going to do for the community.
And that name, Drag and Drive, was never going, it's not like you snatched it from under what the magazine was going to be called. I'm sure it was always going to be called Sick the Mag. I obviously we can't speak for Bailey, but I'd imagine it was always going to have the Sick. Right. The Sick monocle to it.
That seems to be his theme.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a whole nother part of this is I think people have the perception you snatched the name out from under a lot of people, which the trademark office would not have let happen.
Would not have let happen. And in fact, those 3-inch blue circles that we have, we call them lifetime registration numbers that are on the lower A pillar of every single Midwest drag car that's come on out. If you look, and they used to be dated too, so that you'll see a lot of them that say 2019 on them from the very first year that we had it. If you look on it, it says Midwest Drags, and then underneath Drags, it says Drag and Drive, TM. Way back. We had that way back and printed those things for our very first 2019, that was part of the collateral that we submitted to the Trademark and Patents Office to prove first public use, was look at all these stickers that are on windshields of cars that say Drag and Drive. We had it way back then.
Yeah. and it was never mentioned. But I also feel like, maybe I just didn't notice, but I don't think it was super widely adopted at the time anyways. So why would anybody even get mad when it wasn't adopted? You were using it and it was, you know what I mean? I guess I'm just a little confused by where the outrage came from. Maybe it was just boredom. I don't know.
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I was, I can tell you something. I was really beside myself because I did not know where this was coming from. I didn't know why it was an issue. And I didn't really even understand what was everybody upset about, because there was nothing malicious. We weren't stealing this from anybody. We weren't forcing anybody to comply. We weren't forcing our will on the community. We never said to any promoter, you have to sign this, you have to buy our insurance, you have to use our rules, you have to use our classes. We weren't forcing anything on anybody.
Yeah.
It's just, if you want to use it for $1, here's your license. And no promoter that is a drag and drive promoter, a motorsports retailer that is within the drag and drive community, has ever been denied a license when they've reached on out and asked us for it. It was $1 then, it's $1 now, and there are tons of promoters that have it. I would prefer if every promoter had it, but I'm not going to force any promoter to get it. It's up to them if they want it.
And the dollar thing, it has to be there because you have to charge somebody something for it, right?
There has to be a value. Yeah, there has to be a value. So
like just legally, there has to be something, right? Like even though it's just $1.
Right. So it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the money, which I read some of that statements too. That this is just a money grab. Well, I can tell you something. I've spent 5 figures trademarking that thing just to give it to promoters for $1 a year. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the money.
Yeah. Well, most automotive.
It's not about the money.
It really isn't in this world.
Yeah. You don't. Hey, if you want to have $1 million race car, it's guaranteed. Just start with $2 million.
Yeah.
100%. It'll work every time. Same thing is true with horses.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a money-making endeavor. Most promoters will tell you that there's not just endless cash flow coming in from being a promoter. It's not like that. And I actually think about another popular trademark in this world is TX2K.
Oh.
2K cannot just be used on any racing event in the country.
Oh.
It's, you know what I mean? Like he's protective of that.
Right.
And kind of rightfully so. We have FL2K and TX2K. Can't just go make Oklahoma 2K just because you see it fit. And I think most racers would understand that because there's a prestige to it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I would imagine you were trying to protect a little bit there, is the level of it where you don't want, like, I don't know what event, NMCA to suddenly have a drag and drive class and make people do 20-mile cruise and call it a drag and drive class. Well, because that kind of stuff would hurt the sport.
Well, I mean, it is definitely a badge of honor to be able to say that you did a week-long national drag and drive and that you finished.
Yes.
Because it shows not only do you have a very, very reliable car, but you also have the mental mentality to start something and then finish it. Because we all know by Wednesday, you're hating life, right? I mean, you're miserable, you're hot, you're tired, you're sleep deprived, you're hungry, you're just not having fun. So it is a massive goal just to be able to see Friday. So if you have to endure that, and that's a drag and drive, then that's a drag and drive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's definitely a sensitive issue, and I understand why people got protective of it. People that are more diehard in the sport, I would say, than me. I'm more of a outsider, I would kind of venture to say. So I understand why people got protective. What are some of the major points that we need to kind of talk about here? I mean, you had sponsors drop you. You had you were gag ordered from sponsors. You couldn't talk. Like, it seems like it was just.
Well, no sponsors dropped us.
Okay.
No, yeah, that's I know that's a misconception too, but yeah, no sponsors actually dropped us. I had a real dilemma this time last year to figure out what I was going to be able to do, because I still was, getting lefts and rights and a couple jabs, and I just didn't know where they were coming from. But the real moment came to me in the fact that I need the freedom to be able to say what I need to say and defend my brands without worrying about the repercussions of what that would do to some of my sponsors. Mm-hmm. So in all of my contracts, I give all of my sponsors, first of all, exclusivity. So, they are the only axle manufacturer, they're the only oil, such and such like that. But I also give them first right of refusal. So what I did is I just rescinded first right of refusal. Those positions are no longer open anymore. And the sponsors that I don't have with me this year, we have great relationships. Everything is still amicable. There are no issues. There are no problems. I just needed some time to be able to focus on what I need to do and not have to worry about representing them or their issues. So that's the reason why you're seeing some restructuring.
Okay, so yeah, of course, because these big brands don't want to are scared to link with anything that may be negative,
or the perception. It's the optics. It's the optics. The thing is that
the court of public opinion.
Yeah, we did nothing wrong. We were accused of doing some wrongdoing, but the optics was that, hey, this is and I can tell you, I mean, it got ugly. I mean, it got some of the things that were said that were just flat on out blatant lies. And I mean, it was pretty damn disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk about letters being sent to people and cease and desist. Did you send any letters to anyone?
Nope.
On at all? Mm-mm. Did you personally even talk to any of these people that were attacking you?
Oddly enough, not a single one of them that I knew would pick up the phone. They pushed me right on into voicemail every single time. Major disappointment. What I really learned, Coop, was I learned who my friends were.
And all promoters know each other. They all have each other's numbers. Uh-huh. It's no secret.
Right.
Yeah, that's sad, man. I mean, it's definitely from the political side of things. You'd think you could settle that.
It would have been really, really helpful if they would have said, one simple post could have, hey guys, listen, we're not being sued. Mm-hmm. We're not receiving cease and desist letters. Just calm down. That would have been massively, massively helpful if I could have gotten that assistance. But it didn't happen. And I can't control what people do to me, but I can control how I respond.
Yeah.
And
do you think there was any malicious intent to hurt your business behind that by not coming out and saying, by not, I know they don't have to, you don't have to tell the attack dogs to stop, right. But if you let it keep going, at some point, do you think maybe it was a little bit malicious and there was an ulterior motive, or nobody thinks like that and I'm just the cynical one that thought, oh, maybe if you let it keep going, my business will get bigger?
I honestly, I don't know what was in the minds of some of the other. It certainly would have been nice that if I could have gotten a little bit of help from people who actually knew the truth.
Yeah.
Okay? Because, there were so many people. And I honestly believe that a lot of the people that were making some of the comments don't even have cars, not even inside the community. They just saw a dumpster fire and they had something flammable and throw it on there. So, but I never even thought that it would last 3 days. I was that Monday, Memorial Day, I was coming back from King of the Open Road, Jared Holt's event.
Yeah, great guy.
And I had talked with Scott Brown. He was there on Sunday. And Dave and Tina Parisi, they were there on Sunday. They were asking some questions about the trademark. I was answering it for them. And then, that Monday happened. So I'm stuck in the truck driving halfway, 2/3 way across the United States. And my phone's just blowing up saying, what's going on? What's going on? And we're just being attacked. And it seemed like it was okay. But, when NARCS made that one comment about NHRA, that was when it really seemed that it just...
What was the specific comment about NHRA, if you don't mind?
If I remember right, it was something about how NHRA wasn't drag and drive.
Okay.
With what they were doing. Because what they were doing, what they're still doing, and I think is a good thing, they were putting on exhibitions. They were taking big drag and drive cars, the big tires.
Yeah.
And they were putting on the fact that these cars are, look how fast that they are. They're pro mods. And that car is driving for a week down the road and it's living. Massively impressive.
Yeah, they do this quite frequently. Still, they take some of the most popular drag and drive guys and, obviously they're trying to remain relevant and they're taking big names in the community, and most of the big names in the community tend to be drag and drive people at the moment.
Right. So what I'm hoping that's going to come out of NHRA's involvement is that some of these guys are going to say, hey, I'm going to stuff a radiator in my car and I'm going to go see what I can do.
Yeah.
If that happens, we're all winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always felt that there is, though, a little bit of like headbutting between the two communities because it's very tough to coexist with NHRA. And maybe now they're doing a lot better at reaching out, but they've always seemed like monopolistic in a lot of this stuff. And, obviously I'm just an outsider. I have no connection to any NHRA. I don't even hold a license because I don't want to.
I see.
But that's how I've always felt.
Do you have a license with another sanctioning body?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I've always... Yeah, I'm a weird case, though, because I'm a little... I shy away from any authority.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have a podcast, a very, very popular podcast.
I just shy away from any authority, though. That's where I kind of draw back. That's always like the salt on the on the slug in a way to me. It's like it shrivels me up and I get away from it. I did recently get my car certed though.
Okay.
I got that, but that's about it. But you would rather coexist with the largest sanctioning body in the country of drag racing because it makes complete sense.
Yeah, anything NHRA wants to do or IHRA or even WDRA wants to do to be able to promote drag and drive, I mean, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
All hands on deck. I mean, let's, I said to Rick Johnson from Gear Vendors, I said this to him probably about 2 or 3 years ago. I said, I honestly believe that the drag and drive community is going to save drag racing. And his immediate response back to me was, it already has. Just because it's a vessel for people who love their cars to get into the sport of drag racing. Yeah. And we all know that we desperately need that because we're losing more tracks than what we're gaining. I mean, the last couple of years, we've lost, 4 of them, and we've only gained 1, Flying H.
Yep.
Okay. We need people with their 15-second cars to come on out and participate in these drag and drive events and then put a hairdryer in front of it and then put, big tires on it and then get that 850 cage and just keep working on up and keep speeding on up their cars. That's what's going to save drag racing.
I would wholeheartedly agree. I feel the powers that be are not as concerned with being able to take a car that does go down the drag strip and also have it go down the street. That's always been one of my fears is if one person's getting cut off this community, it's the guy that wants to drive his car on the street. That's like bottom of the totem pole, like last concern. And that's always been my worry with, things like the RPM Act and PRI. Like the RPM Act actually doesn't help people that have a VIN number that modify their car and want to drive on the street. So that's always been my worry on that kind of stuff is we are almost a community without direction in a lot of way. And it's a weird place to be in. Maybe most communities don't have direction, but we don't. I know that was it's a lot to... You have different connections than me. So I've always been able to say these kind of things because there's no sponsors here. There's no one that pays for this. So it's tough.
My major interest is street cars.
Yes.
That's it. I can appreciate the big cars. I have a lot of friends who are in fuel, But man, if it doesn't have a radiator, I can appreciate it, but I street cars, that's what gets me.
Well, of course, and I think 99.9% of the racers start with a car with a VIN number.
Right.
They have VIN numbers. Like even the fastest guys in drag and drive, they obviously have VIN numbers.
Right.
I don't know where they came from. They may have gotten them out of junkyard, some of them, but they all have VIN numbers of some sort.
You mean like a 4130 car? Is that
what?
Like a pro mod?
Well, yeah.
How do you get a VIN number on that?
Yeah, exactly.
You just call on up your police department and they come on out and there's a couple pieces of paperwork and they'll actually certify it. The manufacturer of that chassis can put a number on there, and then with that, then you take that to your BMV, and then that's how you get a VIN number.
So I'd imagine not all states have this.
No, every state has this.
Every state, really?
Yeah. Because the '67 Chevy 2 that we gave away that Grabiak owns, that was a brand new car. That was a real deal steel body. All the metal came from our good friends over at Golden Star, and we had a lot of components that were donated to that car to put that car together. So because the body came from Real Deal Steel, which is here in Florida, okay, it didn't have a VIN number. It was a 1967 body, but it was a 2018 manufactured date because we actually had that car on display at the very first Midwest Drags. It was sitting on a body cart.
Yeah.
And during the award ceremony, we said, this is the car that we're going to build, the Hot Rods by Havlicks, we're going to put it together for us. And that next year at the Midwest Drags, we were going to give the car away as a runner-driver. So what I had to do was have law enforcement come on out, and the Havlicks gave it a VIN number, and then the police officers verified what the VIN number was, and then I took that piece of paperwork to the local BMV, and then that was how I got the car registered. Then I could go get insurance on it, and then we were able to plate it. We could then drive it, and we actually took it on out there to Rocky Mountain Race Week, and called on up Matt and June and said, "Can we bring this thing on out?" And they were very nice hosts. We brought the car on out, and Brian Havlick drove it and in competition.
Because that's probably. I'm sure a lot of people have always wondered about that, is how some of these cars that started out as nothing really end up being
sticks of tubing.
Yeah. They end up shipping in from, Alro with just chromoly, and then suddenly it becomes a car.
Right.
How can you suddenly now register this and get a plate? Yeah. And even calling it anything is tough, because calling it a Camaro is like, it's like, well, it could be anything tomorrow if you just had a different front end, a different body. Right. So that's always been an interesting thing. And I wonder if that door was opened more to some of these NHRA guys, there would be more that accept that, more that, take that route, because that's always kind of the gray area, I think, even though it's not.
I think for a lot of these guys that have the bracket cars, I don't think that some of them are wanting to do a conversion to making it street legal. They are VIN numbered cars, but they haven't been on the road in 20 some odd years, and I think that they're just happy with what it is that they're doing. But that's what I'm saying, is if we can show them how much more fun we're actually having with our cars because we're rolling down the street. Yeah. Then maybe they'll say, hey, it's worth the time and the effort to switch it on over and make it streetable again, and then actually go on out and go racing. Because, when I started driving, I was 15 years old, and the speed limit back then was 55 miles an hour. Not to date myself, but it was 55 miles an hour, and we had just a truck and open trailer. It was a 1964 Chevy 2, 400 small block, 350. We did 9.5 seconds at 154. So I was driving the car 3 times the legal speed limit than what I couldn't even drive the truck and trailer down the interstate at 55 miles an hour. What I learned about that, and this was back in high school, I learned that that car was a lot of work for 1,320 feet of enjoyment.
I think most drag racers feel that.
Yes. And that is the reason why I like street cars so much.
Yeah.
I'll take the risk of being roadside for the enjoyment of rolling down the street in my car.
I completely understand that, and I see that. I think that's clearly shown in so many people with the popularity of this segment of racing.
And even too, it's amazing how many people are throwing cash in this, because it's not just whatever they're doing to their car, but then they're going around and they're buying a $2,000 trailer, and then they're shoving it full of a whole bunch of tools. And for a lot of these guys, these tools are all duplicates. I mean, if you look at that trailer that Dennis Taylor built, he can support that car. Like when they pull it back on into the shop, they don't even need anything in that shop but the welder and the lift. Everything that they need to support that car, take that car apart, is completely inside of that trailer.
Yeah, it's kind of like the equivalent of seeing NHRA teams pull their trailers in.
100%, because
they work on them out of there. They don't have anything else.
Those shops are empty. They're 100% empty. And I don't know, have you ever been on Northfield Drive on Friday of the U.S. Nationals?
No.
Okay, next U.S. Nationals, come on up and I'll take you around and I'll give you some tours of some of the big shops. But when you walk in these shops, you'll be surprised. There is nothing in these buildings, nothing. Because when they pull the transporters on in, they literally set up what looks like the pits at the Nationals event, and that's how they work on it.
I've seen, videos of John Force's shop, and every stall is just the trailer.
It's just a transporter.
It's just the transporter, and that's how they work. And of course, it makes the most sense. Why would you use any tools that aren't the tools that you're bringing with you?
Right, because then you just forget it.
Yeah, you need what you have. Like,
right.
It just makes the most sense. And the drag and drive is next to the same way.
I feel it's 100% the same way. If you're going to be serious about this and you really want to compete, you've got to be able to service your car out of the trailer. And I even think too, I ask a lot of guys, I say, so what does your winter maintenance program look like? What are you doing? I'm very surprised to see how many guys that actually say nothing. I'm like, you're not even going to replace your U-joints. You don't do, because I mean, it sucks to go on out there. You compete at this national level, and you got $1,000 in fuel just to get to this event, only to be out on Monday because of a $10 part.
Yeah, I know that's a pain point for sure for a lot of people.
See it all the time.
I even tell people, like, you can't really do 1,000 drive. Like, you can test your car on the drag strip, but you can't practice like 1,000-mile drive.
Right.
Like, you could, but like you're not going to be like, oh, let me do a warm up practice drive. You could do 200 miles, you can do 100 miles. It's still a lot to just do as a test. For some of these cars, some people are probably watching this, like I drive mine every day anyways.
Which massively helps.
But for the most part, some of these big cars, Tom Bailey's not driving his car every day. It just doesn't make sense. Garrett's not driving mullet every day. It just doesn't make sense. So the practice is usually there. Even if you've done 20, 30 miles, it's usually there. So it's an interesting part in that. And I've always joked, like, if I did a 500-mile test, it's going to break on the second 500 miles. Like, I can't do the warm up and then expect it to do the test. It's going to break.
Right.
And I don't have good luck normally, so that doesn't help. But yeah, that's kind of where it ends up being, is a mix of bad fortune and bad prep. But man, I mean, it's tough to talk about the trademark thing. I feel bad because you got so drug in that, and you were unable, it seemed, to speak your part. Why was that? Why weren't you able to? You didn't come out with a statement, right? You had to let this just happen.
Had to let it burn. It was a lot like watching an EV fire. I mean, just the
next cell. Just
yeah, I mean, Narcs tried to get a handle on it.
Who hosts the Drag Drive Repeat show. Yep.
And when that comment about the NHRA seemed like it added more fuel, the consensus was, let's just not say anything, because there's so much anger, there's so much heat. Let's just let this thing die down, and then we'll see where we go from there.
What do you think, looking back on that? Was that the...
At the time, I still think it was the right move, because I don't know. I mean, it short of like coming on your show back then, that would have worked. But I even had a couple people, I asked for some help. I was like, can you, no, you started this thing. You got to fix it yourself. And I'm like, what did I start?
Yeah. So you wanted some people to go to bat for you a little bit there.
Yeah, just help me explain, help me understand what are the issues here, what's people so upset about, and then let's explain, and then they'll see that there's nothing malicious going on. There's no fraud going on. Nobody's being taken advantage of. There's no harm being done to the community. None of the promoters are being forced to do anything. None of the racers are feeling pain. There's none of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around what the consensus of the people was at the time, but I think it's more just mob mentality. And, once people start throwing punches, they don't even know what they're doing, and they're just trying to pile on.
Yeah.
And I think there was a couple big names that, knee-jerk reaction to things was wrong. And then once there's a knee-jerk reaction, you can't really undo that. And that's something people need to pay attention to a little bit too, because it sets a good precedent for what could happen.
Well, there's always two sides to every story, and that's the ththing that you absolutely 100% have to remember, and that's always the hardest thing, because especially when you think that what you're trying to do, the drag and drive community, I love it so much. Now it's being attacked because this outsider's coming on in here and taking everything that we're doing. That's easy to want to try to be able to defend, and it's easy to be able to say that. But if you're just reading that one side of the story all the time, and then you're getting wrapped up in it, that's the thing. But so that's I wanted to come on your show, and I just wanted to explain my what I did before, what I did during the attack, and what I've done now, and nothing's changed. I mean, I have been operating the same.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people may not realize too is these communities it's what everybody always says. The drag and drive community is very tight-knit. It's very strong community, very hard-headed community. And there's some Facebook groups, you have one of them.
Right,
where
Drag and Drive Addiction.
Yes, and those groups are massively important during these events.
Right.
But then when there is no event, they're basically a breeding ground for some infighting about rules, about promoters, about events, about anything you can think of. If there's not an event going on, it's mayhem.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing. We all claim to love drag racing so much. We all claim to love drag and drive so much. I will tell you, in our own little community, it does seem like it's unfortunate, but from my perception, it does seem like there has to be a crisis every 90 days. I mean, last year, everybody jumped on Alex, and they jumped on Scott Brown, then they jumped on Steve Morris, and then it was my turn at bat, So it was crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis. And it's like, do you guys want to go race, or do you just want to cause problems?
Yeah, and that's where it definitely gets tough. And I think a lot of people in drag racing, I feel the same way, are protective of the sport, but the lack of direction, you don't know what being protective looks like. And that can be weird, where, I'm protective, but what do I need to do?
I don't hide from anybody, and I always answer my phone, and I publish my phone. I mean, it's on all of the stuff, the 7223, the race number. Hey, if I don't answer, text me. And I'll call you back. A lot of guys know that. If you want to know the truth, don't ask Facebook, because Facebook doesn't know. Call me, and I'll tell you what the truth is. And that's one of the things that was so disheartening, was the fact that I had tried reaching on out to some of the people, and they were just throwing me right on into voicemail. They didn't care.
Yeah, and I wonder what the thought behind that. A lot of that is obviously, it sucks. It's hard to not answer the phone when there's that ability, and I know that was a lot of why we wanted to talk here, because reaching out the olive branch a little bit to unite the community a little bit, but some people in it may not care to even think that way. Maybe they don't care to have it united at all. Maybe they just run my event, you can run your event, any rules you want. I mean, I've often said we need similar rule sets. We need similar, it needs to be similar enough where you don't have to change your car to go to different events.
That's exactly right, and that's one of the reasons why I adopt the drag week classes and rules, because they've spent 2 decades now modifying those classes and those rules. Why reinvent the wheel? And so many people have their cars built around those rules. There has to be some standardization, and then each promoter then can deviate a little bit, that gives their own event their own little style, their own little spin, such as for the Midwest Drags and Nostalgia Nights. What I did to be different is, instead of 5 days, I'm 4 days, and I required 2 hits instead of 1. I feel that it makes a little bit more tighter racing. I mean, your class winners are now an average of 8 instead of 5. So with that gives me that little bit of spin inside of having the same classes and the same rules as some of the other events.
And it keeps the one and dones from happening, where people just leave before anybody gets to see them.
Yeah. But if you really want to say you have a killer street car, you have to go do a lot of different drag and drive events. You can't just be polarized on this one. You have to. And that was the whole reason, why we came on up with the World Championship. Was because we wanted guys to go on out, and we want them to try a lot of different drag and drives, and we want them to go on out there to Colorado and where there's no air. You better take your atmosphere in a bottle, or else we want people to go down to where there's sandy beaches, and try not to get the sand on your tires and drag it on the track. We want people to see the cornfields, right? You do that, you're proving that you have an all-around car. And you're also, again, the biggest thing, you're proving how tough you are mentality-wise to be able to say that I'm going to start this thing, hell or high water, I'm going to finish it. And last year, I was really happy to see that Bryant Goldstone won, because we all know what a champion he is. We all know the struggles that he went through by putting that car on the lid and then rebuilding it.
Yeah, which car are we talking about?
The Javelin.
The Javelin, yeah.
Yeah, the Javelin. All steel, all glass. And he won the World Championship. And what I'm really happy about was the fact that he won it, same driver, same car, because the rules don't currently say that it has to be the same car. And I think that gives some people with some bigger budgets that have multiple cars an unfair advantage against somebody else that actually has a single car.
Absolutely. And it's, I mean, how does the championship work then? Do you just basically take a conglomeration of all the events that they've done that year, or?
It was well, and I think that this was also maybe a little bit of confusion about the trademark, which the trademark had nothing to do with the World Championship. Drag and Drive is the trademark, and from there, I created the brand Drag and Drive Addiction. The World Championship stuff was its own little entity that was brought to us by some sponsors and a handful of other racers that said, this would help to unite the community if you guys did this.
Yeah.
So one thing that we had to do is figure out, man, what the hell does that look like? So we first figured out, what are we going to measure? Because, we know a 5-day event, we're going to consider that a national event. What about 3 days? Okay, we'll consider that a local regional event. Those are the good ones, because those are the feeders that help the guy come on out and go do the national event. So this is what we're going to do. And then we came on up with some guidelines that says, if your event matches these guidelines, then we'll measure your points.
Yep.
And for the actual championship.
And even, there's some 8th mile ones popping up as well, which is cool in itself.
We measure the 8th mile. Nostalgia Nights, my own event, is strictly 8th mile because, Midwest Drags is a 1/4 mile event. So I wanted to create something for the 8th mile guys for Nostalgia Nights. So then, when we were coming up with that whole rule set, we put that back in front of sponsors, and we actually put it out in front of all of the promoters. Mm-hmm. They got to see all these things and make some comments on it, because what we didn't want to have happen was a promoter to come back to us and say, oh, your rule set here makes it difficult for my event to compete in that. No, before we put this on out to the racers, tell us what we're not seeing so we can modify the rule set so all these drag and drives can be included. Are we measuring the points right? You know, we give you so many points just for showing up. You know, I think you get 1 point, right? Then you get points for every single day you compete. Then you get points if you see Friday. Then you get points depending on if you're podium, right? So all of these things, you know, as we were coming on up with this outline of this is how we think it should be done, we put it back in front of some of the promoters and said, are we on the right track? What are we not seeing? What's good? What's bad? And from that was how we actually had the outline, and then we put that out in front of the racers.
And these promoters can choose not to participate in it at all and run their own event. You're not forcing anybody to do anything here. You know, they can just do their own thing and just be like, oh, I don't care about any of that.
But the idea that...
But then they won't get the racers that care about it. So that's where you have to...
Bryant Goldstone at the last minute went on out there to Vanderhoof's Street and Yeet.
Yep.
And it was because of that one that he took the lead and that he won. And that's what I'm saying about uniting the community. I haven't talked to Bryant about this, but I can't imagine he would have just driven on out there without having the goal of wanting to have that championship, right? Because Doc talked about it too with C Red. He was calling me all the time. I want to win that championship. I want to win that championship. There's only going to be one first drag and drive world champion. I want to win it. And that was what we were trying to build, is we were trying to get this, you know, we have something that these guys, something else that these guys can be able to win besides just podium of one particular event.
Yeah, and then, you know, you have the award ceremony with that, and then you have
that was at PRI.
All of that deal along the side, which adds a lot. Yeah,
and look at all the trophies that we gave away. You know, that was expensive. You know, that room was not given to us. We had to rent that room. Drag and Drive Addiction rented that room. We Drag and Drive Addiction paid for all those trophies. We had some sponsorship help. That's, you know, but I mean, that's what we were doing. We were doing this to give back to the community.
Yeah, to try to feed it, to make it a bigger, more mainstream community. And that's always the debate too, is like people say, oh, I want to be more, you know, mainstream, more like more accepted. Some people may say, I don't care to be, you know, any of that. But to get the recognition of NHRA, PRI, things like that, you know, the cornerstones, I guess you could say, of the automotive industry, you kind of need to show legitimacy and have a united front.
Yeah, well, you know, racers don't compete to lose. They do it to be able to win. And so we were creating more ways for racers to be able to win.
Yeah.
Based off of their performance. That's what all those trophies for the Drag and Drive Addiction at PRI, that's what all of that was based off of, was to give more back to the community, to get more people excited.
So what's the where are we at now with your event, and what has kind of transpired for Midwest Drags after all this? How is it? What needs to be done? What's going on with it? Where are we at?
Well, we're still doing really good. We still have, you know, we're getting close to, you know, about 30 more days. We still have some spots. This is that part of the window where cars start breaking, parts aren't arriving. People are starting to call and say, hey, we're not going to be able to make it. So then you open on up more registration, you let more cars come on in. So we're doing good. We're going to be at Clay City. Kentucky Dragway is the host. Then we're trying to drive on over there to Beach Bend. We're going to go back on over to Edgewater and then come back on down. And what's really cool is we're going to be visiting Hargett Automotive. Hargett puts on his own events. He's got a dyno there. He's got a very, very nice facility. So we're going to be visiting Hargett Automotive. We're going to go on up and see one of the fastest manual shift Mustangs at Fat House Fabrication. And then we're going to go on over there and we're going to see all the guys over there at Tin Soldiers Race Cars.
Okay,
so three really killer motorsports related
Jeremy
route
up
stops.
There, right at
Jeremy Howell.
Yep.
Jeremy Howell, Fat House Fabrication.
And then,
he came out and ran Nostalgia Nights last year, and I got to tell you something, man. That Mustang that he has is literally an unfair advantage. I mean, it's
they have that thing dialed in.
That thing is so fast, and he would have won the manual shift for Nostalgia Nights. He had some problems the last day in the trans, but I mean, that thing is just, it's on rails.
Yeah, and then Jason Terrell is obviously one of one of the best people in drag racing at the moment. So yeah, that's pretty awesome that you're gonna get to touch into all those places. I mean, Tin Soldiers is next level.
Yeah, those guys are great. I always want to go to motorsports related route stops. One, because we're in the Midwest and we can, right? But two, it's for the sponsors and for the racers who are supporting the drag and drive community. Let's go back and let's show them some love too.
Yeah, I actually very much so dislike when there's lame stops on drag and drive. But personally, me, I've always been in like D class. So anytime I go anywhere, it's like, I saw it at midnight.
Well, okay, so here's another thing.
That's normally my MO is I've never seen a stop when it's not pitch black.
Okay.
A checkpoint.
Okay. So remember I told you earlier, I said every single rule, a lot of the rules that I have came from a racer. You can thank Schroeder for the express lane.
The Corvette, right?
The blue Corvette.
2 Corvettes, right?
He's got 2 Corvettes now. The
Two
second
blue C7 and a C3?
Right.
Okay.
So the second one is a Bickle car.
Yeah.
Okay. At PRI, he said to me one time, he says, listen, something's got to happen because, it takes us 2 hours to turn this car around. And, you don't want to have, your racer sitting in purgatory in the staging lanes. So I created that 750 express lane. So, when you're ready, and it takes these guys 5 minutes, 10 minutes just to get dressed, right?
Yeah.
I said, roll on up. It's usually lane 6. You roll on up. When you're ready, your co-pilot come on up, let us know. You can go on up there and you can make your pass, and then we go back. We don't actually pull lanes. We go across lanes. So 1 and 2 pair, 3 and 4 pair, and then the express lanes run. And then you come back to 1 and 2 and you keep going that way. So you don't have to worry about lane jumpers.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm one of the slower cars, but I completely have all respect for the faster guys to do what they need to do because they got a lot more going on. If my 10-second car needs that much work to turn around, that's my problem.
Right.
And that's a personal issue that I need to figure out,
Right.
but they obviously need time.
Right.
And then they also deserve the time because those cars need to be nut and bolted. They need to be safe at a different level than the rest of the cars. So they can't be, you don't want that person in a rush. You don't want that person to feel like they're trapped in this rush and they have to be in the lanes. So I have a lot of understanding and respect for that, and I'm sure a lot of people don't.
Yeah, it gives them the time to be in the lanes and then go through their process of getting dressed and switch over from, this casual fun mentality to making sure you're doing everything, all of your procedures for when you're prior to going into the water box and then thereafter. It just gives them time to be able to breathe and not have to worry about everything and then rush. Yeah. And then new for this year, you've got a lot of guys, like Cirillo, who are in the 850s. I mean, that 850 class is massively competitive. I mean, these guys are running for, I saw Steinke one time hot lap his car 9 times, right? Because he's just trying to slow it down. He kept running a 749 with a something, which you can't do that. You broke out, right? It's not legal.
You turn in a 20-second slip.
You turn in a 20, and then at that point, you're just making fun runs. Yep. The rest of your week is just fun runs, right? So we now have an 850 express lane because it's taken these guys so long to get temperature back out of their cars that they can come on up there, they can sit, and when they're ready, then it's the same process. The 850 cars will run 750 runs, and then we go back and then do the other lanes.
Yeah, I've talked to Aaron with the with the silverback 4th gen Camaro. He's got that thing so dialed in for 850s. And, he's changing the most minuscule things on that. And that's why, honestly, we should all fear if more bracket racers get in because they're pretty good at running a number.
They are, but when you couple that with the car being consistent rolling down the street, that's when it's really impressive. Yeah. Because the other aspect of it, too, is you're a bracket racer, but you've been camping at that track all weekend long. That's not true in drag and drives. Every single day, your track is completely different. Left lane is completely different than right lane. And we all have to go down that same surface. Yeah. So there's that variable in that. And, some of the bigger guys that are getting really, really good at the 850s, they're not doing this with a laptop. they're doing it by ballast. They're taking
Yep.
5 pounds off the back of that axle, and that's what's getting them to be able to hit that number.
Yeah, everybody has a different route to get to that 850 exactly. You know, lifting isn't really the right route. It's too inconsistent.
You'll overcorrect.
Yeah.
You'll just overcorrect. So,
And that's where it's tough. But even, you know, the 850, a lot of people don't realize that's where like a cage cert really is like you need a lot more after that. You know, like getting to an 850 cage is very easy. Getting to a 750 cage requires a big next step. So that's why this 850 has grown to be
Right.
so big, because it's kind of the fastest you can go without needing so much. And I
Well,
like that.
it's funny that you bring that up because we've got some things that we're working on to try to be able to put something in between
In between,
750 and 850 because I mean that's a jump.
yeah.
I mean that's a major jump. And so many of these 850 cars are easily 820, 830,
Yeah.
right? And then it's not fun when you have to sandbag because you have to hit a dial, right? You want to hang it on out.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to really turn it up. Everybody wants to be like pushing their car a little bit. That's why so many people that I've talked to are just like, they'll just set a personal goal. Or it used to be more like that. Drag Week was more like that, where personal goals were more of a thing, I think. But now the rule set has come and like classes have opened up where it's more competitive with the group. And I think that was the old Drag Week mentality, was like personal goals and like finishing it. Now it's competitive.
It was certainly about having fun with your friends for a week. That's 100% what it was about. And then the bragging rights of seeing Friday, you know, that's what the appeal was. And that's what, you know, Freiberger created. And look what it's turned on in today.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a quick break. So there are people that are saying, I know there's rumblings that people say you shouldn't have the trademark anymore. If you just voluntarily gave it up, wouldn't somebody be able to just say, wouldn't somebody just be able to grab that? Because the president's already said that you could have it. So you can't just voluntarily give it up now without somebody else taking it.
You know, the massive fear is because it's so popular, everybody wants it, that if I'm not continuing to protect it, somebody maliciously will come on in and then they will impose their will on our community. And then they'll say, you have to have this, you have to have that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's exactly what I don't want. I want the promoters to be able to run their events however they want. And I don't want somebody to tell me how I have to run Midwest Drags or Nostalgia Nights. So, you know, to say that I shouldn't be able to have the trademark or the phrase of drag and drive is also then saying that a person who creates something isn't allowed to keep their own creation. And that's simply not true.
Yeah, that's tough to even imagine. I mean, obviously, I agree. You should have all right to it, and it's so tough. Trademarks are touchy in that aspect to begin with.
It's only ugly because attorneys are involved. But
They
attorney
do ruin everything.
they you know, 90% of all conflicts, I personally believe this. 90% of all conflicts are due to lack of communication. And when communication breaks down and emotions take over, that's when the attorneys are involved because people don't want to communicate.
Yeah.
And I'm always here. I'm always answering my phone, and I've been reaching on out to everybody else. Any drag and drive promoter, any drag and drive sponsor, any drag and drive racer who wants the license for $1 annually will get the license.
What about, you know, merchandising and things like that? You know, because on that side of things, people want to sell things. Even like now, there's this huge push of people self-funding by showing up with T-shirts.
Yeah, right. Well, the race.
And it's a beautiful thing to see that there's enough fans that somebody that's not even that well known could sell their way into running these events. And I mean, that's like the grassroots. That's as grassroots as it gets.
That's exactly right. Yeah, doing anything you possibly can to be able to afford the gas to go racing.
Stickers, whatever it is.
Yeah, merchandising and all that stuff, it's all wrapped up inside of the licensing agreement. It's all there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously some people have sold it in the past, drag and drive merchandise across the board. I mean, and none of them have even gotten anything either, right?
Yeah, I mean, are you? I'm trying to figure out. Is there a specific instance you're thinking of?
Well, Summit sold shirts,
Summit has a license.
Summit has a license,
Summit has an annual license. Yep.
but other people sold it without realizing that they were infringing on the trademark, and you still didn't come after them, right?
No, I just called them. This is the thing is that I'm not expecting anybody to go to the Trademarks and Patents Office and do their research to see if drag and drive is taken. Now, clearly on everything that we do, we have the black R mark on there, which, the TM says that you recognize that it's yours and that you want to protect it. But when you see that R symbol, it means that somebody paid the money and it is federally protected. Okay, and ours has the R on it. It is federally protected. Okay, but in that, Coop, this is what you got to understand. The person who owns that trademark has to police it themselves. There is nobody else that will do it. So when you see somebody who is using your trademark, it's your responsibility to contact them, notify them, and work it on out with them. Otherwise, you're in danger of losing your trademark. So when I saw other people in the drag and drive community using it, I reached on out to them and I said, hey, welcome. This is pretty cool. I just want to let you know that I have the trademark. If you'd like a license, this is what we can do to go down that path. You can seek compliance and and then you can have lawful use of using my federally protected phrase. But yeah, I mean, nobody was, threatened.
And you could have been malicious and hired a law firm and said, hey, police this as you see fit. Because there's trademarks like that in the world where here you go, you guys deal with it and give me a kickback on how much money you get from these people.
There are companies on out there that will look for trends, that will trademark that trend and then go down and shut it all down. And that's the danger that we are in this, that if I didn't have drag and drive, somebody else probably would have already done it and then would be shutting us down or be enforcing their will upon our community. I mean, that's 100%. And then, in that, as long as there's open and proactive communication, there's no reason to handle things otherwise.
Yeah. Are there any trademarks in the community anywhere else? Drag Week, Race Week, what would you say to them if they aren't trademarked or should be trademarked? Are they at risk? I mean, because there's other words too that may not have gotten.
Well, the only thing that I would say is just go back to the Promoters Rule 101, which is if it's worth promoting, then it's worth protecting.
Yeah.
I mean that's just it. And if you don't care that somebody can come on in at the 11th hour and take away something that you've been working on for the last decade, that's okay too. But
because like Drag Week, are they at risk? Like you would think Motor Trend would protect that.
I'm not an attorney.
Of course.
I don't know all the ins and outs of that. I just know that, I created Drag and Drive and I wanted to be able to protect it so that nobody could come on in and.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's an understandable thing. I don't think anybody's going to say you shouldn't have protected it. I think there was just a lack of education, from my understanding, in the origins, the ownership, the use, the everything.
The reasoning. The reasoning is to unite the community and to build something and to protect something and put an umbrella over what it is that the racers are doing. Not what I'm doing. I'm just the promoter. But what the racers are doing. The racers vote with their dollars. When they register for a certain event, they're voting with their dollars. And the racers are making drag and drive what it is. Mm-hmm. So it's on them.
Yeah. And obviously kind of the knife has kind of come out of your side a little bit, it seems like, on this over the last year. It's died down in the community from what I see. I'm sure you still see it, but I'm third party enough where I don't see it, which is probably a good sign for you.
Yeah, I mean, the feeling like that I'm the devil and that I'm imposing my will. I mean, that certainly has subsided. But I have got a lot of support, which is really cool because, again, like I said, I found out who my friends were pretty early on. And those people who actually knew the truth, knew well before the attack ever happened, our relationships have gotten even stronger. And in that, we're going to keep continuing to build the Drag and Drive community and keep continuing to be able to promote it.
Yeah. So that's awesome, man. I mean, I'd love to promote the event to kind of end this off. I mean, we've covered it. I feel very confident with we've explained the sides of the story, and if people choose to still be on this side that they're on now, you can't really sway other people's opinion on you, unfortunately. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't really personally care to sway anybody's opinion on me. It's it's just how I've always been.
Well, one thing is for sure is that haters are a sign of your success, right? Because nobody attacks a loser. And during that attack, one thing that it showed me is that how successful the phrase was becoming.
Yeah.
Because again, nobody wants to take something that isn't worth something. The phrase drag and drive is incredibly valuable. It's incredibly valuable. And if I don't protect it, somebody maliciously will come on in and they will kill what we are doing.
Yeah, that's obviously always a worry. And the other flip side is you have to protect it. So if somebody did come in maliciously, it needs to be in the hands of somebody willing and able to protect it.
Yep.
So that's like the scary thing too, is if somebody else has it, maybe they're not as able to protect it.
That's right.
And they'll get trampled.
Right.
And a big name could easily trample somebody or intimidate them or outlawyer them.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the thing is you got to worry about, can you be outspent or can you outspend the other person? But at the end of the day, it also comes down to a lot of logic and reason. One thing that's true about, trademarks and stuff like that is that it has to be good for the community, right? And what we're doing is good for the community. There is no harm being done to the community. But that wouldn't stop somebody else from, if the trademark were to fall into bad hands, that wouldn't stop somebody else from imposing a lot of harm onto our community, and then it taking us a hell of a fight to be able to prove the harm that is being done.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, I can see that for sure being a big concern and a big keeps you up at night type of thing.
It is, because I'm still having fun, right? I'm going to keep doing this as long as I'm having fun, and I think I'm going to keep having fun as long as there's streetcars.
So, yeah, that would be the main fight, and I think that's where a lot of us lose the plot. Is we all want the same thing, and it's not anyone in this community trying to take that away.
No, what it comes down to, honestly, is we promoters need to start communicating better. And when you're a promoter, you have a certain level of responsibility to the community.
Yeah. And
we need to do a better job. I work with a lot of promoters, but I want to work with all of them. And I really think that, look what Freiberger did in 2005. Look what it's turned into. What could Drag and Drive be in 20 more years?
Yeah, do you think Freiberger doesn't get enough credit in the Drag and Drive community?
I don't know. I consider him the Wally Parks of Drag and Drive. I wrote about it in the yearbook.
I feel like a lot of people may not realize, because a lot of people are new to this, that he's the pioneer of it.
He tells the story. That's how I learned about it, is on the broadcast. He's how did I come on up with Drag Week? And he tells the story.
Yeah.
So maybe that needs to be an annual story during every single one of his broadcasts, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he does a fantastic job. I'm massively impressed. Like when Loans leaves on Friday to go do an NHRA thing, and then he carries the whole entire show. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, and he's given up competing for the sport. You know, he's given up being a drag and driver to be the guy that runs the deal.
Do you know how cool that would be, though, if he could find the time in his schedule to actually come on out and do one sometime? No matter what the car is. I mean,
he's got to be getting there. He's got to be, you know, I feel like he's now become so big that he can take the time. Maybe that's the opposite, but maybe. I mean, it'd be cool. It'd be great to see him on one of these other drag and drives.
Yeah, because I don't know that he's ever. I don't know that he has. Maybe he has competed in one, but I don't know that of a time where he actually was the competition driver.
Finnegan's done his fair share.
He's done a lot of them.
He's had a lot of trouble at every one, but
and he says that he built Blasphemy for the sole purpose because he came on out, saw it, wanted to be a part of it, and then went back there and built that 55. I mean, an awesome segment of how they found the car as a shell in California, and they took it on up to the Pacific Northwest. Had a I don't remember whose chassis that is, but then built the car strictly for the fact that he wanted to go on out and do drag and drives.
Yeah, and that's a great example of a car just for that.
Yeah. So if you ask me one word to describe what is drag and drive, my one word would be inspiring, because everybody who sits and watches and then eventually builds the car, whether it's a brand new build or they're converting something back on over to being streetable, they did it because they're being inspired by somebody. That's the one thing, is that it's inspiring.
Yeah, I feel like that, you know, I've been to NHRA events, I've seen Top Fuel, and I'm never like, I need to do that. But you go and watch and follow a route on a drag and drive, if you're like, you know, just a weekender and you want to watch it a little bit and then, you know, follow some cars, you're like, oh man, I'm doing this.
And then you go home and you open up your Summit catalog and you start buying some parts for that third gen that's been sitting out behind the garage for 10 years, and you actually start doing it.
Yeah.
That's what we want to be able to save drag racing.
And that's why also, I'm not sure 100% if you have this, but the race weekers, the guys that, not, what do they call them? The sick ward here, where you're not part of the event per se, you don't go down the track, but you do everything else.
Right.
That kind of stuff's really good as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a lot of fun with that.
Right. I saw a post a couple of weeks ago that I thought was really, really awesome. And it was from the guys up there at Miles of Mayhem. They came on up with, and they're calling their version of that, they're calling it hang and drive, which I think is absolutely, it's clever. Because, I mean, what are you doing? You're hanging out and then you're driving. Yeah. And then what are the other guys doing? Well, the racers, they're dragging, they're driving. So, you know, kudos to the brainstorming that is going on that's continuing to build our community.
A lot of the drivers actually end up jealous of them, the ones that are just hanging.
Yeah, because they're taking it easy. I mean, they're the guys that can sleep in a little bit longer. They're the guys that can stay up a little bit later. They're the guys that can do this and do that.
You're sweating through your shirt and you see them walk by with an ice cream cone and you're just like,
right,
damn it.
Right.
We're doing the same thing here.
Right. But at the end of the week, who has the more satisfaction?
Exactly.
The guy that went through Hell Week.
Exactly. There's moments where you're like, I should have just been that guy. But then at the end, you're happy you're the guy that did the race. But then, you know, I've made friends with some people that are just following along, and they are at every stop checking in. Hey, how you doing? You need anything? Like they'll show up on, you know, morning of racing and they're like, hey, I grabbed you an extra sandwich from the gas station. And you're like, wow, they're like unofficial support. You know, they don't help you on the car, but they'll grab you a freaking hot dog, which is huge.
Yeah, fans are fans. That's exactly right.
And they're the diehard ones.
That's right.
They're the most diehard ones there if they're following along. So it's cool. It's something I would recommend too, especially for like a parent or something, grandparents that want to cruise along with, or somebody's got their kid.
So what we do in that is we offer an all tracks pass that's $50, and then they get a red wristband. So they basically are now a participant. It's not a green wristband. They still can't touch the competition car.
Yeah.
but they are now a participant. And each day when they roll into the track, they don't have to stand in the spectator lane. They get to roll right on through the same as what a racer does. And that's only $50 versus actually paying, gate prices that day.
Yeah.
Plus, it's expedient.
Yeah, you get right in.
Right.
Probably get some preferred parking and whatnot and make it a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, it goes a long way. And I think as more events pop up, that's the kind of stuff that's going to separate the events, because there used to be no competition. Now there's going to be so much competition that now we're in such a good market for it that the best will boil to the top. And that's how it should go in a truly competitive free market, is that it'll boil out. And that's an exciting thing to see, because it's just going to be better for the consumer.
Right. Well, the promoters that will survive are the promoters that put the racers first.
Yep.
100%. I've always said since day one, I said, my job is to take care of the racers take care of the fans take care of the sponsors come back and they take care of me. That's the circle.
Yeah.
And it literally is just that easy. My priority is the racers, because the racers they're the cast. If this is a movie, the racers are the Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are bringing and getting people to watch the live feed. They're the ones that are getting people to play hooky from work and come on out and sit in the stands. It's the racer.
Yeah, I think a lot of racers lose that as well, is that they're so important to this, and like a lot of them kind of, maybe they don't interact with people enough, or they're, they just kind of try to do their own thing and like get out of there as quick as possible. Like, I get it all for a racer standpoint, but like I've had this conversation with people. As a racer, I feel some responsibility for the fan experience. And, obviously I don't expect everyone to, but there is some responsibility there to the fan experience. There is some responsibility to the event in a way to make it as good as possible.
Well, a racer is responsible for promoting themselves. And if they're interested in ever picking on up sponsors and getting help with some kind of funding, they've got to be able to become popular. And the more they can engage with the fans, the better off that they're going to be.
Yeah, I've been frustrated by that question a lot, is how I get sponsors. And usually they ask how to get a sponsor without ever attempting to do any race, never building any car, never doing anything that a sponsor would be interested in.
Right.
And then it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. They don't just sponsor because you're a good guy.
Right. Well, landing sponsors, I mean, if you ever take like a Sandler sales class, getting sponsors, just follow what Sandler says. And getting sponsors are pretty simple. You just have to figure out what does the sponsor want and then deliver that. And, perfect example, when my very first year, Midwest Drags, the dates that were set for that in June were not dates that I had chosen. My dates that I wanted were in May. I wanted the cooler weather, the cooler temperatures. That was what I wanted. I would take a chance. I don't care about the rain so much. We'll dodge that. It'll be towards the end of May. We'll be okay. That was what I wanted. But when I went on out there and the sponsor bit and said, this is what we want, they chose the date because it has to fit within their schedule as well. I'm not the only one. They have a million other things going on. And if I want their help, it's a two-way street, constantly back and forth. So you have to be willing to, understand what it is that the sponsor wants and then give that to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's a serving role. You are serving the sponsor. They are not serving you. You are serving them.
No, they will.
There's a lot of options.
Sponsors will write you a big old check and then show up for the party. Yep. And they are, you're their ambassador. You're helping to bring some attention to their brand, and that's what they're paying for.
Yeah. I always joke with people, that's why I don't do any sponsor reads here. There's no sponsors on this, because I don't like being an employee of anyone. And if you can figure out how to not do that, I mean, the cars that have no stickers on them, I'm always like, respect, because that's not easy.
It's not easy to be self-funded, to be a privateer. Jim Head He's like one of the only privateers that runs fuel, and he operates. He doesn't go to all 23 races, but he'll do 18 on, and he runs that fuel car on $750,000.
That's grueling.
And to put that in perspective, most cars have a budget of $3 million.
Yeah.
And he's doing it on less than a third. So you talk about how are his tunes? They're conservative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, not to say I don't have partners. I have people I work with. I've never signed a contract with any of them. It's all friendships that are just, we just work together, you know? I avoid most level up of that, where it's more than just a friendship that you work together.
Right. Well, there's a major difference between a contract and an agreement, because contracts have stipulations for penalties. Agreements, I like doing agreements because everybody's good intentions, their memory fails them. And I have, you know, if you put it in writing, both sides can easily see that, oh, way back then, this is actually what we did agree to, even though our memories are failing us now, and it prevents a lot of conflicts.
Yeah, I know it's a tough thing, and I know I actually field a lot of questions from friends in this space on how to deal with getting sponsorships and pricing and all kinds of things, because that's a gray area in itself. And I talk to my friends all the time about that. They're like, hey, like, I'm working with this company, like, what do I do? Because they don't want to say a number. That's the tough part of it. They don't want to say a number first. Mm-hmm. It becomes a weird situation. So to touch on maybe you can help me with my fear of establishment here.
Okay.
And maybe there's other people listening that are like me that avoid established things. Would you push me any direction? Would you say anything to somebody like that? You know, or is...
Well, that's the most amount of freedom you're ever going to have. That's for sure. Because if nobody is paying you and you're your own boss.
But even on like my lack of participation, like I don't go to PRI, I don't mess with NHRA stuff. I'm very lack of establishment on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's something in me.
Uh-huh.
But I'd love to maybe be sold.
Yeah, that's true. I've never bumped into you at PRI, and I've been going to PRI since 2004.
I don't go back.
Oh, okay.
I've been there, and
so were you at PRI in Indy, or the 5 years we were there down here?
I went one time in Indy.
Okay.
And I've just avoided establishment since just going down. As I've gotten older, I've avoided more and more of any established anything.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's any way to sell me on it. I would say I'd like to be different, but I don't know if there's any way to get there on that. I've worried that these establishments, you know, not to put any words in your mouth, I'll say them. PRI is known to take money in and do very little for people back, is always my worry. And that's what has kept me from establishments. And maybe I'm wrong on that, and I'm fully willing to be persuaded the other way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, it certainly would be interesting to get some people from PRI on this show. I
asked Jamie Miller.
Oh, yeah?
Jamie Meyer.
Yeah, Meyer.
But he's no longer with them anymore.
Yeah.
But that's always been my worry, is like I always feel like any group has nefarious intentions. Once it's enough people together, that same mob mentality, they end up on the wrong path, and it's not for the people that are involved in the organization.
Well, that could certainly be true with any organization once it hits, you know, a certain financial, right? I mean, because if you look at our own history, they were all farmers. Nobody wanted to go to Congress because they couldn't go on out there and work their fields. It wasn't until being a congressman actually started having a salary, and then it was an annual salary, and it was more than enough than what you could pull on out of your field. It's like, oh, well, shit, I just take some money on out of the pot. Maybe this is actually where I need to be instead. So But that's, I mean, once you start putting money into something, I mean, that's when it always is. But, again, yeah.
I know it's tough. It's a tough thing I deal with myself, and I worry about the intentions of anyone, and maybe I'm too nihilistic on my own brain here that I worry that everybody is out to steal their piece of the pie without contributing to the pie at all, and they just want their slice, and then suddenly our community is left with nothing. And I'd hope that that's not true. I mean, I look at, organizations like NHRA or NRA who have completely not had the will of the people that they support in mind. And I worry we go down the same route by supporting these people, but then by not supporting them, you end up as a disenfranchised group of people that has no direction whatsoever.
And you think as individuals, one thing that I certainly would like to be able to start seeing is, a greater respect and understanding for what the motorsports community as a whole has done for the world. There is so much safety in our daily drivers because of motorsports. I mean, I'm driving, the rental loan out there that I have, that Nissan. It has a reverse lockout. I gotta press the button and to push it forward on into reverse. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Right? Where does all of our chassis and our suspensions come from? Where does being able to hold onto the ground so well because of the shocks development? It all comes from that. And this would be a really interesting poll. Maybe you can do this for me because I've always wondered this. How many of us in motorsports would sell our RVs if all of motorsports were to cease? The camping community, the RV manufacturing community, I think, was massively propped on up because of us camping at the racetracks. Toters, Super Cs, whatever it happens to be.
Even just enclosed trailers.
Yes. All of that has come from the motorsports community. So when the motorsports community is being attacked by, let's say, something like the EPA, we're being left to defend ourselves.
Yeah, and we're even disenfranchised from other groups that are being attacked by the EPA. In that same sentence is the farmers are in the same boat, but there's not a crossover where there's any...
Right.
They're just we're both fighting the same fights with DEF and all this stuff, and then we just kind of both are going our own ways fighting it.
Yeah, so, one of our properties, we have a horse farm. I know a lot of farmers. They're in litigation against John Deere on what's called right to repair because you can't even plug on into the ECM. And, it's not, I can't even imagine what the expense is of moving a combine because it won't roll anymore, moving it to the dealership just so you can plug on in to find out that it's a tiny little solenoid, right? Why can't they fix that right there in the field?
Yeah, I think that would be a personal thing where people should just stop buying John Deeres. I don't know if the federal government needs to step in there on that personal belief. I think they should stay out of any farm. But I think that would more be a avoid John Deere because they don't care about the consumer. That's my worry. Because that just shows to me they don't care about their consumer. And that would be a company that you avoid at all costs if they don't care about your consumer.
Yeah, and you know who pays for everything? The end consumer.
Yes.
The end consumer pays 100% of everything. There's no such thing as I'll get the company to pay for it. The person at the grocery store, that's the person that pays for everything that was upstream.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate how that ends up working. And, I've talked to Jay Barry, who owns Ignite Racing. He's in the same boat. He's in both sides. He's a farmer. He's a drag racer. He's getting hit everywhere.
A chemist?
Yeah. He even makes alcohol. So he's getting hit by every federal organization at all times.
Right.
And somehow he stays sane. But we've talked about that pretty extensively, and it's hard because they make it impossible for him to sustain in any way. Like, it's sad. It's like, not even that. He's also fighting the freaking the big oil. He's going to bat everywhere somehow. But it's tough. I'd love to see more leadership in the automotive world. I don't know what leadership looks like in the automotive world. I know SEMA and PRI are leadership, but you never see a talking head really, that I've ever seen that is like, this is what the next 5 years needs to look like in motorsports. And that's even with drag and drive. Like, what do you see the next 5 years look like? Like, where do we go here? What's 5 years look like from now? Are we still going to be able to do the same thing? Are the litigators going to eventually get us off the street?
Well, this is where there's safety in numbers. You know, the stronger that we promoters work together, the better off drag and drive will be. The better off drag racing will be. We can either swim together, or we can sink as individuals. That's what I see. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to go up or if we're going to go down. But I mean, I'm a major advocate for proactive communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because these next 5 years, these next 2 years, 3 years, those are going to be detrimental to whether this can sustain or not. Because if anything, more are just going to be more noise, more on people's radar, on the wrong people's radar. So it's almost more imperative to be a united front against the situation that's probably coming down the pipeline as we speak. I know there's been huge, Virginia versus the EPA, or I think it was Virginia versus the EPA, was a huge win against the Clean Air Act. And I hope things like that can kind of keep our community alive, because it's whether you want to drag and drive or not, you should probably support the community.
You should support the community if you care about your own individual rights, because the thing about liberty is that even if it doesn't 100% directly affect you today, if you allow a right of one of your neighbors to be eroded, it makes you weaker. And so when you band together, you have the safety in the numbers. So I don't want somebody coming and telling me that I can't do this, even though I have no desire to even go and do that. But if this person on over here likes doing that's entertainment for them, as long as it's not illegal, then we need to help that person be able to preserve his right, because they take that right away from him. Next thing you know, they take every single time there's a law that's passed, our rights are being eroded every single time.
Yeah, and that's really all that Congress currently cares about doing, is new things that give them more power, because the only way you can have a job is if you can justify your job.
Yeah, I think, and attendance. Yeah. I think didn't Anthony write a song about that? Richmond, north of Richmond?
Yeah.
All they want to know everything, and they want total control, something like that.
And that's kind of where we're at right now, unfortunately.
But so to that, one of my actual goals is I am working towards a day when I can delete all of my social media profiles. I want to, and I've said this to several of my friends, I think I might be one of the last generations that remembers what life was like pre-social media. And it's one of the reasons why I'm not on social media a lot. I'm a private person. You don't see me posting every single day about, hey, look, I got another bottle of water or whatever. Nobody cares, okay? I don't need anybody to be able to know that. And we really don't know exactly what this internet is going to be like. We don't know where it's going. We don't know who has the information. And to me, it is massively scary that we are voluntarily giving this black unknown hole all this information about our lives. And it's why you don't see me posting all the time. It's why you don't see me commenting all the time. It's when people tag me all the time and expect me to comment on this one thing. I don't need to do that. That affects I want to go on outside and I want to live. I want to be at the racetrack. I want to be with my friends, and I want to be out in sunshine. That's what I want to do.
Absolutely. And I completely understand that. And even for my personal self, I've gotten more of a longing on social media to bring issues to light instead of just useless chatter in a way. Like, I mean, lately I've done a very deep dive on reading every bill that Congress is putting out.
Oh, wow.
And I'll break them down, and I put them out on social media, anything that's affecting cars that's coming out, the Jobs Act 2021, I broke down everything that said about the automotive world. I put that kind of stuff out because I'm trying to be a little more focused on educating our industry rather than useless chatter. And I don't know if that's just something in my brain that kind of flipped, but maybe it's like a longing for change in this world that we need in this industry. Because if you just have a small hammer and you keep eroding the same thing, eventually there's going to be nothing left. And we're so close to the edge of, like, I mean, you even see it now. The amount of cars that are probably going to sign up for your event that are, 2022 and newer is just going to get less and less because people aren't going to be able to enjoy those cars the same way that, they enjoy their 90s cars and their 2005s and, like, 2012 I would say is when things started to really change into, like, not what they are.
Right.
And that's something I think is going to become worse.
Yeah. There's a big difference between a computer command controlled vehicle and the vehicles that we have today, where every single thing, there's a sensor on everything, and you gotta I mean, you want to replace, your doorknob, you got to reflash it. That I like the computer command controlled vehicles of even the early 2000s, but once it got crazy to where, I mean, you can't even, this rental again, you can't even be a man and close the gate. You have to press a button, for it to be able to go on up and down. It's just actuators, more things to be able to go to brake.
Yeah, well, Chevy, even on their Global B stuff on the new C8, they want that direct link where if you park it, it will revert back from the satellite. Like, it will get, cell signal, and it will revert back any calibrations you made.
Oh, wow.
It'll reset itself.
Okay.
And that's just like, whatever you did, you may have paid your tuner $2,000 to tune it.
Okay, so then the question then is that even though you paid cash for that vehicle, do you really own it?
You don't. And that's why you probably shouldn't buy that vehicle. And because the only way that they'll feel that, the only way that they'll change anything is if they see it on a spreadsheet.
Vote with your dollars.
Exactly. I don't think any amount of firearms from the federal government pointing at them will really help the end consumer. It's just going to make it more expensive. And then we're going to be fighting a different fight that we don't even know. Because nobody 10 years ago, if you said your car was going to connect to the 5G tower and revert its tune back, nobody would have believed you. So we couldn't predict that.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to GM school back in the 90s, and that was right when there was electronic carburetors coming on out. CCC was just coming on out. I learned on a Snap-on MT2500 where you had to have the cartridges. You had different. OB2 wasn't standardized at that time, so you had to get a different pigtail depending on who that manufacturer was, because the ELDs were not standardized. And then you had to go find a cartridge. It'd take you 20 minutes before you even had access into the ECM. Never did I ever think that it would be to the point to where, I mean, you're almost more of an electrical engineer than you are a technician anymore these days, with how crazy things have gotten on these vehicles.
Yeah, man, it's a scary future. I mean, I don't know where. Nobody can really predict what it's going to look like. We can kind of hope and maybe use our dollar bills to push the OEMs in a right direction. I mean, look at Dodge. They were on top of the world with their Hellcat platform and their V8 Hemis, the Gen 4 or 5 Hemi, whatever the most recent one was, with a big supercharger on top of the world, and then suddenly they're gone, and they come out with this horrible looking inline 6-cylinder that has all plastic everywhere. And it's like, that was not a decision made based off of their spreadsheets. I can guarantee that.
Right, because the cars were selling. They were selling crazy.
Yes.
Yep.
And they could have put it in a different like, the cars would have kept selling. And it's just it's a weird thing when businesses don't make decisions based off of the consumer desire. and based off of regulation from top down.
Well, to be honest with you, there was too many police chases.
Interesting. They couldn't catch him.
Too many police chases. Yep. I mean, you can't give the guy,
But like a Tesla could do that?
yes, but you don't see people in an EV outrunning the police right now. You don't see that.
No.
You don't see people that you don't see the the guys who go race in Mexico are not racing EVs.
No.
So,
but even like, I mean, if a cop has a Crown Vic, you're likely to get away from them in any vehicle you have.
yes.
Any 2020 or newer vehicle, you are likely to outrun a Crown Vic for the most part.
Right.
But I get it, the optics.
But are
of the
there any
Hellcat.
Crown Vics left? I thought Cletus has them all.
He does have pretty much all of them.
Yeah, I think he pretty much buys has the whole inventory, right?
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. I didn't think that the cop chases were the thing. Even in the recent bill that I read, it has a provision in there for by 2026, all new cars have to come with a ability to passively monitor the driving of the driving style of the driver to distinguish if they are drunk or not, and it can decide to turn off the vehicle if it deems them drunk. So if you're driving in an erratic enough way where the car you're driving thinks that you're intoxicated, it will stop.
Right.
And that's in all cars by 2026.
Right.
It has to be in there. So that means any car that may have been imported from, a lot of cars imported from Korea and China and stuff, that is probably going to stop because they don't care to implement that kind of stuff for the most part. It's an expensive system. I don't even know how they're going to make it.
A first thought where they would start would be swerving.
So, like, if you have to miss a deer?
Well, one thing a cop will do when they're behind you is that did you cross a line X number of times in a certain distance? So if the car knows that because it knows what lane it's in, that could be one potential thing.
Yeah. I will have to do that, but that means every car is going to have to now monitor all of this. It's going to have to monitor steering inputs and, if it wasn't just a drift, if it was like...
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot.
I mean, again, that gets back to some people are going to vote for that and they're going to like it. And what it's going to do is it's going to take away another freedom from those of us who are responsible enough to not drink and drive. It's going to take away another freedom from us.
Well, it passed. I mean, it's already... Oh,
it did?
It passed,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It was in a... Okay. It was in a bill with 1,039 pages.
Yes, everything's hidden.
And it was about one small paragraph, and it passed, and all OEMs have to implement it by 2026.
How do you read all this? Where do you have time?
It's the passion to now.
Wow.
Because I've learned nobody else is reading it. So
kudos for you. Well, maybe PRI should hire you then, huh? You could advise them on what's going on.
I think they only want other influencers up there. I'm too anti
I see.
everything.
I see.
But that's enough tangent. I think we'll wrap it up there, man.
Okay.
I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
You still have spots open for your event, so
I do.
I'll put all the links in the description here, and then everybody that is interested in checking it out, it's in Kentucky. You get to go hang out with a bunch of rednecks. That's not my quote. That's Jason Terrell's quote, rednecks in Kentucky. But if you guys want to go check it out, it's awesome. They're so fun to see, and they're so fun to participate in, so I highly recommend it. But, man, thanks for coming on. That was a blast.
Absolutely. This has been a great trip. Thank you.
Good deal. Well, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.